This is Launching Your Daughter podcast, and I'm your host, Nicole Burgess, licensed marriage and family therapist. The information shared in this podcast is not a substitute for seeking help from a licensed mental health professional. Now, here is today's episode. Episode 19. Welcome. Today's guest is Stacey Horn. She is going to discuss the power of introverts and how different temperaments can affect the relationship between parents and their teen daughters. I also want to let you guys know we had a little bit of technical difficulties with some of the sound periodically. Tried to do my best in getting that cleared up, but hopefully it'll all come through clearly. I hope you enjoy today's episode about temperament as much as I did. And here it is. Well, welcome everybody. Today I have Stacey Horn, who is a licensed clinical social worker, a hypnosis, and a coach. And she joins me today from Colorado. And I'm so excited to have her on today because we're going to talk a little bit about introversion, extroversion, and temperament. So welcome, Stacey.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, this is so exciting. I can't wait because I know with a lot of the girls that I work with and even the adult women I work with, a lot of them truly are introverts. And there seems to be some confusion on what that even means. So I would love if you can tell our listeners just a little more about you and the type of work you do, and then we'll get into that discussion.
Okay. I agree. There is a lot of confusion around introversion and extroversion, what it means. And most of the things you find on the internet talk about those two characteristics, which is only one piece of the whole of temperament. I actually fell into temperament. I'll say it that way. Okay. I had a client that was talking with me. It was now 8.5. And I said, I've got this pretty smart 8-year-old. I'd like to parent her in a way she can be everything that she can be without making myself crazy. Mm-hmm. And I said that because I was 45 when I had her. So I'm an older mom. And I know that I love my mom and I have such a different appreciation now. I wish I would have known this information when I was a teenager and that we had understood each other. When I was talking to this client, she said, "Oh, I'm a keeper. You need to read I'm a Keeper." And I said, "What's that?" And she told me how to get it. I got the book. It's written by Ray W. Lincoln, and it's part of Innerkinetics. And it's got this really cute little kid on the face with paint all over him. And it says, "I may frustrate you, but I'm a keeper." And I read it and I devoured it and I started using the information as well as I could immediately. And after 20 years of being a social worker, it was a relief to me to not be looking at people as far as diagnosis and looking and focusing on their strengths and helping them understand their strengths of who they are, who their parents are, etc. So that's a long story, but that's how I fell into the temperament work. And it has changed every relationship I have. Again, my daughter's 8.5, but I really want to believe that we'll have a different relationship than my mom and I were able to have at the time that I think we enjoy now. But it's, like I said, to have this information out there for people is really, really important to me. And I'm excited to be able to share some of it through your podcast.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, it sounds like that book, the recommendation that you got, and I do quite a bit on the podcast of, different book recommendations from the therapists and things. And it sounds like it so changed your life and raised awareness, and it really deepened all of your connections that you had. And now you not only now pass that on to your daughter, but everybody who you connect with. So that's beautiful.
It's fun. There's some new information I'll talk about in a few minutes, but it's about a workshop called Teaming Up for the Teen Years. Mm-hmm. And it's very specifically talks about the use of temperament, about helping our children. Our children will bond with us when they think we understand them, and that builds trust. And we can expect that they'll bond with us, but it starts with them.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Love it.
Yeah. You had asked me earlier before I went off on my little excitement, um, there's a lot of information about introversion and extroversion, which are significant pieces. It's in some ways it's the most obvious thing that we see about other people is whether they go in or they go out. It's about restoring our batteries.
Mm-hmm.
Do you charge your battery by going inside, or do you charge your battery by connecting with other people? And I think that's a nice, easy definition and way of looking at it to understand it. And often we get characterized as shy or awkward. And in truth, someone who's introverted has a little bit slower processing, having to go in to be able to respond.
Yeah.
So it reframes it
Yeah.
in a nice way that's easy to own.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, Stacey, if you wouldn't mind, I know you were kind of hinting a little bit about it earlier, wouldn't mind sharing a little more about what is temperament? Like, as you were just saying, the introversion is kind of going more within, extroversion is kind of, you feel more energized connecting with others. But if you wouldn't mind, explain just a little more what that means, the temperament piece.
Sure. Many people are familiar with Myers-Briggs testing or a few other temperament sorters that are often used in the workplace. The model that I use is called Innerkinetics. It's by Ray W. Lincoln, and it's far simpler than some of those other models. It also uses what we know now about neurology and how our brains develop. So it's about as current as it can be. So there are 4 characteristics to temperament. The first is, how do you recharge your battery?
Okay.
By going in or by connecting with others. The second is, how do you take in information about the world? Do you take it in through your 5 senses, which would be an S, or do you take it in through a 6th sense, which is an N for intuition? The third characteristic is, how do you make decisions? Do you make them through thought and analysis, characterized by a T, or do you take an additional step and make decisions based on, but how do I feel about it, or how would other people feel about it? Some people believe that it's thought or emotions, but it's actually both are analytical, but people who make decisions with feelings, it's an additional consideration. It's, how do I feel about this? How do other people feel about it? So there's a lot of confusion about that as well.
Okay.
And you hear the difference in people's language. I feel this, or I feel that, or it seems to me, I think, are some ways that you can notice that in people's language. And then last is lifestyle preference. Myers-Briggs called it judging and perceiving, but we don't use that because everyone judges, everyone perceives. Lifestyle preferences, a J, is you like to make a decision and move on. You follow a pretty clear sense of time, versus the P, which is liking to keep options open, not wanting to make a decision until all the information's in. Someone who has a P has a very different awareness of time. My daughter has a P, I have a J, and I can say, will you please, we're leaving in 5 minutes. To me, that says 2 minutes, before 5, the 5 minutes is over. I have my keys, I'm at the door. When I go to find her to go to school, she's like, it's been 5 minutes already. She doesn't have that ongoing, the clock doesn't talk to her in the same way.
Yeah.
And that's a big difference between parents and children. I think that becomes very obvious and very frustrating for parents when their child in particular has a different awareness of time and doesn't have the sense of pressure to be someplace on time or prompt or early. So those are some places where relationships can get really snarled up, I think. is just in some of those differences.
Yeah, you've hit it, because there are quite a few families. I'm thinking back on some of my clients I've worked with, and boy, we've had many conversations about kind of those morning routines and evening routines, and parents kind of have their own agenda, and their kids may be like, yeah, whatever kind of thing.
Yep.
And so that's great to have that awareness. It's more about
I'll get there
temperament.
eventually.
Yeah, it's that temperament, and being able to have the tolerance and talking about kind of what works and what doesn't, so that it doesn't become a power struggle between the parent and the child or the teen. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
A painful one for many people.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Ah, that's great. Well, I'm kind of curious. So then how do you work with, when you're doing your work, whether it's the coaching piece or the hypnosis piece of it too, then how do you work with the temperament for the clientele that you work with then?
I actually have them complete a temperament key, whether it's a child, which there's a child assessment that goes to age 14, and then 14 and over is considered an adult. I have everyone I work with complete a temperament key, which takes about 10 minutes. So I know exactly how people, again, are taking in information about the world, how they're expressing it, and the things that they become aware of. It makes a difference in the suggestions I give with hypnosis. It's made the hypnosis far more effective.
Okay.
And I'll give you a quick example. I had a young lady who had difficulty with sounds. She couldn't tune them out, so she came to me for hypnosis. She was 12 and came to me for hypnosis to learn how to tune out some of those extraneous noises, like people coughing or someone clearing their throat or someone chewing. So the suggestions I was able to give to her were very tailored to how she took in information about the world, and thus she was able to tune it out. Wow. So that's an example of how that worked amazingly well.
Yeah.
With the temperament work in general with counseling, people fall into one of four categories, which are general categories. I'm going to give you letters, because that's how they're described. One is SP, which is someone who's in the moment. They are in the moment, and the moment moves on. Often they're diagnosed because the diagnostic criteria aligns with the strengths of the temperament SP. So that's kind of a different take on some things. Mm-hmm. Another one is SJ, which is someone who's very sensory and very driven. It's all about, this is driven and motivated by responsibility, by taking care of one's loved ones or responsibilities. So decision making is all based from that place of motivation. The third one is NT, which is analytical. It's intuitive, very often techy. So they obviously express very little emotion. They feel it, they experience it, but it's deeper, it's more subtle, and it's overridden by the strength of their analysis and making decisions. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. I'm taking notes as you're saying this. I'm like, oh, wow, this is great.
It answers so many questions.
Yeah.
And the last one is intuitive and feeling. So often healers, people who are counselors, nurses, therapists, and it takes in information, again, through more of a sixth sense, a knowing, instead of, being able to clearly define, this is what I see and this is how I experience it. It's a little bit more nebulous sometimes. And depending on the combination I'll use for this example is my own is NF, and my mother, who is SJ. Mm. And my mother sees things more black and white. Then I experience everything gray. There's lots of shades of gray. And that was one difference between the two of us in hindsight. As a teenager in particular, it caused conflicts. It caused me to feel that she didn't understand me, and I'm sure she felt the same way. As a result of that and some of the things that happened in my life because of who I was as a teenager, which was really, really sensitive, it makes me even more committed to wanting mothers and daughters to understand this information, to prevent that disconnect. Someone who's NF is typically extremely sensitive. Often a term that's out there is highly sensitive people. And it's not only someone with an NF temperament, but it happens more frequently because of the intuition. There's a sensitivity, and because of the decision-making process, factoring in the emotions, it becomes very sensitive. And it's very confusing as a child and as a teenager to be so sensitive to things and not really understand why. Yeah. And this is one of the ways of understanding that.
It absolutely is. I mean, again, you can't, excuse me, you can't see me, but I've been, again, shaking my head. Yes. Oh, yeah. So this is great. This is great. So, yeah. And I love how you said, too, that you really want to stop the disconnect between moms and their teen daughters, because it's such a difficult age in and of itself, with so many changes of pulling away from parents and more into their peers. But also I find so much of it, they're trying to be perfect in all different ways, and they can't be, because there is no perfect, whether we're a teen kid or an adult. And so I love that you're trying to find the ways that both the parents and the teens can truly feel connected and be seen and heard. So I love it.
Because the world is so much more complicated than when I was a teenager, certainly. But I think that when girls in particular feel connected and bonded, they're more likely to come to a parent and ask questions or talk about what's going on in their world, as opposed to all of the friends who may be influencing them in any number of ways.
Mm-hmm. And when they have that safety, that emotional safety, right? Because there is that connection, then they will seek that out from their mom or their dad.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, in the next part of this, are there certain, fears or certain kind of obstacles that you may sometimes hear from either the parents or the teen girls about even seeking out the services, or what maybe their concern is if they go this route of trying to find out more about their temperament? Or is there fears or anything that kind of stand in the way or sometimes stop them?
I think temperament isn't well understood.
Okay.
And I know that I've even struggled with the proper language to use in a way that explains it to average people, the regular people that we all are. Often therapists and know more about it, but not always, depending on what their interest has been or their calling. So sometimes it's simply explaining that this is a way of understanding each other so that we can connect more deeply. We can communicate more effectively when we're communicating. An easy example is someone who has an SJ temperament is again, a little bit more black and white, very practical, not a lot of fluff to them sometimes. Mm-hmm. And if the other person they're trying to communicate with is all about the gray area, they're both sometimes saying the same thing, just using different language. And when you have this understanding as a foundation, I think action becomes much more effective. You're going, oh, yeah, that's right. Well, Mom, it was A, B, and C. And, I'm not going to add all the subtypes or, C, 1, 2, and 3 details, because you aren't looking for that. You're looking for, I went here, I went here, I went here.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful way of explaining it. One, it's trying to find the language that most people would first go, oh, that's what I want, or I understand. And then you're saying, okay, now let's create that foundation to explore that more so that you guys have a deeper family connection. Yeah. And kind of be able to work with one another on to that deeper level. Yeah. Love it. I love it. Well, and so that kind of goes into the next part of it too, some of the benefits. So if you've got some other, examples or other ways that this type of counseling, or even for the hypnosis piece, what are some of the benefits, either the teen girls and or their parents or adult women, what is it that they are getting from all of this? I mean, again, I've got a plethora of information from before, but tell me a little more.
The part that I work with people is relatively short term. I often work with people for about 6 sessions, and then there may be follow-up. But
Okay.
I work with each person individually, like a mother and a daughter. I tell them about who their assessment tells me they are, and then who the other person is, whether it's a significant other or whether it's a parent.
Mm-hmm.
This is who your mom is. This is who you are, and this is the differences between you, and these are how you can connect and bridge those differences. So I really like that. People aren't dependent upon me. There's the books that they can use to get further information. And like I said, it reframes everything we've known about ourselves. It makes different sense than it had before. So I think that's one benefit for adults who have a longer experience of doing whatever we do. But for teenagers, and I'd like to give one example, and it was based on my own experience and my own sensitivities. I think as a result of that, I had a period as a teenager where I became very involved in substances. And what I know in hindsight, and what I see with a lot of my adult female clients who also have an NF temperament, is that they use substances to self-medicate that sensitivity. So that's been a really powerful thing to understand. And for teenagers, boy, I want to prevent as many of them from getting lost in that and damaging, or losing out on high school, losing out on college or careers, if that's true for them, to give them that understanding of, oh, gee, there's nothing wrong with me.
Yeah.
That's just how I am. And whatever the temperament is, that's probably the big gift is, oh, so there's nothing wrong with me. This is how I'm wired.
Yeah, and I like the way you actually do that breakdown. You said, it's typically like 6 sessions where it's like, one for the parent, maybe one for the teen daughter. But that's just it. It's like you really work one-on-one with them up front so they get a true deeper understanding of who they are, and that normalizing. It's like, yep, you're totally normal. This is kind of where you fit in. And then it's taking it and bridging those two pieces together then for that family system and saying, okay, here's what sometimes can work for a family or work for a relationship, and being able to really open that up for all of them. So yeah, and I totally understand that, the NFs being so sensitive and giving them some insight into that and ways to cope with kind of the flood of sometimes the information that comes in or the stimulation where they're not trying to numb out. That it's so much about that self-care and taking time out and going within, to be able to kind of tune everything else out. Oh, love it. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, what a gift. What a gift to give someone who's been struggling for however long, you're normal. This is who you are. This is how you're wired. And now we'll go on to how can you manage it in a way that lets you be everything you can be.
Yes. Oh, I love it, Stacey. I love it.
Me too.
Well, it comes through. Definitely comes through. So I'm curious, you said a little bit, and I know part of what I typically ask, it sounds like you also do some recommending of different books. So maybe it's in between the different sessions or even after, they have completed everything with you. Are there certain books or pieces of advice that you recommend to either the parents or the teen girls?
Yes. One book I use pretty exclusively. One is called Innerkinetics, and it's written by Ray W. Lincoln. And it's most applicable to the adults. It's what I recommend to the parents. And it's amazing. It's written in such a way that it says, this is, once we know what your temperament and type are, this is who you are. And then the next part goes into this, these are your strengths. Because we believe if you focus on your strengths, weaknesses don't interfere with your life. You're focused on your strengths and you're being everything you can be in relationships, in work, in school. You're following passions and how you're motivated to be in the world. Kinetics is the book that I recommend. And I do ask that people check out the website Ray W. Lincoln.
Okay.
because and order directly from them, because that's the best way, I think. The second book is, well, there are 3 books. The second book is the first one I fell into, and that's called I'm a Keeper. And again, that's by Ray W. Lincoln. And the new one that I'm really excited about is called I'm Still a Keeper. And as I said, the cover of the first book has this cute little kid with paint all over his face that if you were a mom and saw your child coming at you, you'd be like, oh my God. And this newest book was just published, and it's called I'm Still a Keeper, Successfully Parent and Partner with Your Teenager. And it's got the same kid
Oh.
who's now a teenager, and
Uh-huh.
he's a cute guy, and he's got a little you can see the picture from the original book where he was a child. But this information talks about how our brains develop starting about 10 or 12 as hormones become more and more significant in our bodies and minds. And it just makes sense. It's simple, it's clear cut, and depending on the age of the parent and the age of the child, or children in a family, I recommend typically all 3 of these books because it gives the whole scope. I want the parents to understand themselves as much as possible, and I want them to be able to understand the children because they need to be teaching. They need to be helping children understand who they are and what their strengths are.
I love it.
As parents, we all want our children to be the best they can be, and I
Right.
believe this is the best way of doing it and helping them be that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Oh, it's great stuff. Great information. And I'll have all of this on the show notes so that people,
Okay.
if they're driving right now and they can't write it down, that's totally fine because it'll be on the show notes that they can look that up later on. Well, could you let our listeners know then, just how do they find you? Where are you located, your website, all of that fun stuff? Let them know how can they get a hold of you if they'd like to get some services.
They can find me at www.stacey, Stacey, Horn, HORN.com. And I've got information about temperament. I've got information about hypnosis. So I try and cover the whole scope of what I do. And I continue to kind of integrate how those pieces all work together.
Awesome. Well, excellent, Stacey. That's just beautiful information. And I want to go back really quick. You had stated there at the beginning something about a workshop. Is that your workshop?
Yes.
Or okay, tell us a little more about that because I forgot to follow up earlier.
Okay. I love doing workshops. I love teaching based in these materials. One of the workshops I do is called What's Love Got to Do with It? And it's about the marriage relationship. It's about couples relationship and helping that become stronger. And I do a lot of work. I've done a lot of work with co-parenting using some of these same materials, helping parents who are either separated or divorced understand themselves and their ex, as well as children, in these terms, so they can parent together in a way that actually helps children instead of kind of wiping adult stuff on children, which happens. So helping educate people in that way. The workshop that's coming up is Ray is doing it himself, and I'm sponsoring it in my community. It's called Teaming Up for the Teen Years.
Okay.
And it's about exactly this information, how to partner with your teenagers. So, and some of this information is going to be coming online, both myself and Ray. And in our partnership, I'm an affiliate of Innerkinetics and Ray W. Lincoln. So we're going to be continuing to do a lot more joint work, both virtually as well as in person.
Excellent. That's so exciting. Well, thank you again, Stacey, for coming on today and sharing this great information of the work that you do, how it's impacted your life, your relationship with your daughter, and how you continue to really wake up and educate parents and teens and all the clients that you work with. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Nicole. This has been great fun.
Good. If you liked this episode, I invite you to subscribe on iTunes to receive the weekly updates. I also want to say thank you for your ongoing support in helping stop the next generation of teen girls and struggling with anxiety and confidence issues. Thank you for listening to Launching Your Daughter with Nicole Burgess, licensed marriage and family therapist. For more information or to stay up to date, go to launchingyourdaughter.com. You can sign up for my email list or join my Facebook group. Thank you.